the Record with Michael Lansford. Brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends. See you tonight.
I'm going down on the floor.
This is nice.
All right. So far, this isn't bad, I got to tell you.
That's nice.
A little bit better.
Isn't it?
Hey, Vic, no suggestions, okay?
Welcome to Off the Record. I'm Jay Onrait. Michael returns tomorrow. Today we speak with a Canadian wrestling legend who has just written a brilliant new book. It's called Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling. From Calgary, Alberta, the one and only Bret Hart. Bret, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here. This book is remarkably honest, remarkably well written, and you were able to achieve this detail because of an audio diary that you kept for 20. I'm fascinated by this. How did you come up with the idea to keep an audio diary of your life for, well, pretty much since you were in your early 20s?
You know, it was just kind of a stroke of luck kind of thing. I just, like even when I played football in high school, I kept a diary of all the stuff that went on in the locker room and things like that. And I think somewhere back in the 80s, I found this notebook I had of all my writing about just silly stuff in the locker room with all my friends in football and in high school. And I thought about it, and I think I bought the dictaphone to kind of do the same thing with wrestling. I said, someday I'll listen to these tapes and I'll bring back memories that I forgot all about. And I said, you know, so I made a promise to myself that I would make these little entries whenever I could, which a lot of times I had to do them in airplane bathrooms, and you know, when you're driving the rental car back and you drop the wrestlers off, you might make a little entry and just talk for a minute or two about things I did and where I was and who was with me. And then as in the beginning, I didn't say so much. It was every few weeks I'd say something. And over time, my career started to get more interesting, and I kept making these little log entries, and I'd say where I was and who I was with again and say all this stuff. But I always thought, I made a promise to myself I would never listen to them. I said, once you finish the tape, you put them away and you don't listen to them till someday when you want to. So I never listened to them. I put them all away, and by the time my career was over, I had 100 of them.
I get it. You're so remarkably honest in this book. You say about your father, the late Stu Hart. Stu had a temper so fierce that some would consider his corporal punishment child abuse. Too many times, I limped around bruised and battered, my eyeballs red and ruptured because of the discipline. What would your dad think, knowing that you were saying these things now about him, Bret?
Yeah, I don't think he would. I think he would. I think he'd own up to it. I think he'd. I don't think he's, and I don't think anyone in my family and myself in particular. I don't have a lot of. I don't have any animosity or hard feelings or bad feelings about how my father raised any of us. I think you had to understand the dynamics of 12 kids in the family, being raised during the 60s, and 5 older brothers that were, you know, hell on wheels, all of them. You know,
absolutely, yeah.
And so I think my dad, if you understand him, and I think the way it comes across more in the book, I don't think of my dad as a bad man at all. I think that he set a really good example, and he ruled in a way that if he hadn't been as hard and strict with his sons, that he would have lost complete control. And Owen and Ross and my younger brothers that were coming up, and me, I think I would have, God knows what kind of trouble I would have got into if I hadn't been so afraid of crossing my dad.
Yeah.
I believe it was a blessing having his discipline the way he did it.
And you do speak very highly of him throughout the book, and it's wonderful to read. Now, this is another interesting fact. You talk about your womanizing on the road during your career, cheating on your wife Julie throughout your marriage. You said the lust was stronger than the guilt. Sex seemed like the lesser of all the sins that lay in wait for us. You talk about the cocaine use, the alcohol abuse that went on the road. This was your vice. Are you able to come to grips with it now? And what do your kids think of the fact that you're speaking about this infidelity now?
I think it'll clarify a lot of things for people. I certainly don't intend to glorify and make people think that I'm, you know, trying to, you know, make it sound like it was the right thing to do. But I wanted to, in this book, to put in my own flaws. If I'm going to be so judgmental or critical, say, of a lot of the wrestlers that develop drug problems, I thought it was only fair for me to be honest about my own failings in life. And with my kids, for example, I think it'll give them a better understanding of what what my life was like, and that it wasn't so easy. And I know that it's not easy even now for people to understand what I was trying to say. But I think when I look back at some of the people that helped me throughout my career, and there was people that spent time with me in sort of, I guess, these infidelity issues. But a lot of the times I felt that they were people that helped me and supported me, and it was pretty lonely. It was a pretty lonely life. I wasn't ashamed of their reaching out and helping me. Sort of, maybe for 24 hours, they'd take me around and maybe get me something nice to eat, and we'd go to a movie or something. It was like a blessing to have somebody that cared. And in a lot of ways, during that 24 hours, they helped me survive the wrestling. And I wasn't trying to glorify that kind of conduct so much as say, there was a lot of people that helped me on the way, and that was more of a sort of a salute to some of the people that helped me. Not so much I didn't want to hurt my reputation and things like that.
The book is called Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling, and we're going to talk more to Bret about that in next question, but the panel is up next.
Off the records, lied to me. I'd given this man everything you could ever ask for. Has no honor. I never gave up. He cheated me. I never lost that match.
I don't forgive Shawn Michaels for anything.
I never lost that title. Kiss my ass.
Hey, again, we're talking wrestling. The panel well-versed in the subject. Begin with Bret the Hitman Hart. But your relationship with Vince is a little better now, Bret?
Yeah, we're on kind of on a live and let live kind of level now.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. Paul Koziar, we're happy to have you here. You're known as Flesh.
Thank you.
Some of our viewers may know you as Flesh. Still wrestling, still enjoying the biz, and we're going to talk to you about the wrestling biz in just a second. Speaking of still in the biz, Scott D'Amore, happy to have you here, Windsor, Ontario's own. You were Coach D'Amore in TNA Wrestling. We're happy to have you here as well. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
And Dan Lovransky, host of Live Audio Wrestling. We know you've got some unique things to talk about this subject, and specifically, we want to talk about the steroid issue in wrestling right now. Bret Hart's new book, Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling, Bret talks about how difficult it was to speak at his father Stu's funeral. He writes, "Keep walking, I told myself, for Davey Boy Smith, for Brian Pillman, for Kurt Hennig, for Rick Rude, for Miss Elizabeth. So many of us are gone, so young, and directly on account of the wrestling life. Since then, Bret's friend Chris Benoit was involved in a tragic murder-suicide of his wife and son. As well, 10 wrestlers were suspended by the WWE for violating the company's wellness policy. Can wrestling survive the Benoit tragedy, Bret, or is it too little too late?"
No, I think it can survive. I think wrestling's it's kind of been trying to clean itself up a little bit, and I think that they're kind of getting whacked pretty hard for stuff that I think they didn't really have a lot of control of on anymore. Like the steroid problem, I think it was a mistake that they made back in the 90s when they had it wiped out and it wasn't a factor anymore. And then they threw it out. Funny enough, just after they screwed me at the Survivor Series, they threw the drug policy was tossed, and people started taking steroids again. But I can tell you from my own honest opinion from the 90s when they had legit drug testing for steroids with Pasquale, the Olympic tester and all that. It was two people watching. It was real testing, and they completely wiped out steroids. That's when I was in the peak. I was world champion. Luger, all those guys were off steroids, and I learned through that experience that wrestling doesn't need steroids.
But obviously steroids are back. I mean, it's obvious by what's happened to Benoit and the tragedies that we've had.
Yeah, but I don't think it's the steroids the problem. It's the painkillers. When you're on the road 24/7, wrestling 6 days a week, you know what I mean? That's what's taking a toll on the body. And the alcohol. Steroids, yes, but I say somas, Percocets, that's what the wrestlers are getting themselves involved with.
Well, Scott? Really, Paul touches on the most important thing, which is the lifestyle. And 250 plus days on the road still quite often is the norm. Yeah. It's the painkillers, it's the steroids, and it's the fact that it's not going to change as long as guys think that they need to run, you know, at 200% all the time, and that they need to have the biggest, best body. First of all, you got to stop pushing and favoring people that have larger-than-life physiques, because there's only one way to get those, and that's through artificial means. There's very few people that can get them without it.
But Dan, that's when we think of wrestlers, you know, we think of larger-than-life physiques. How can we not have that?
We do think of of larger-than-life physiques. I think that there's a place for both. I mean, if you look back to when I was a youngster in the 70s and that, there were tons of big guys, but none of them were on steroids. They were just naturally big guys. I think they need to look a little bit harder to find guys, and I also think they need to educate fans. I think a part of this lies in the fans' laps, because they need to know that not everybody needs to be the size of a Brock Lesnar or a Bobby Lashley, and that you can have guys that are Bret's size or smaller that are very acrobatic and present a very dramatic style. It's just the fans themselves need to be somewhat educated. The problem is the WWE is the main company, and Vince McMahon from day one has always liked big, huge. I mean, he tried to start his own bodybuilding league, for goodness sake.
He did.
The guy loves big, muscular guys.
If you look at it, fans should be get educated to it, because if you look at it, look at MMA. Some of the greatest fighters in the world are 160, 170 pounds. So this whole bigger is better thing should be completely gone. And TNA, the company I work for, not to shamelessly promote, for 5 years, we've pushed athleticism above physiques. Now, absolutely, we still got our physiques, and they're always going to be there. But somebody does not stand at the top in TNA just based off of a physique.
So nobody in TNA, everybody's clean?
Not saying that at all. I'm not saying that everybody that works in this studio is clean. And I'm saying that there's definitely
clean.
Well, I'm pretty clean unless you're testing for gravy, because I may fail for ragu. But the fact is, no. But what I'm saying is the lifestyle is still too strong, and unless it comes down with a hammer from above, and that's like, I do some work with All Japan Pro Wrestling in a Japanese environment. Their deal is they tour for 2 weeks, then they take 2, sometimes 3 weeks off, and it's unbelievable how much better the guys feel working that schedule, even flying the 14 hours there, the 14 hours back, because that 2-3 weeks doesn't just let your body recuperate, it allows you to adjust into normal life, and allows you mentally to get back in the state of being a human being.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. That's really, really important. That's something that wrestling has needed for a long time. They need some sort of off-season.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for that. We're going to move on, but one thing I want to mention, have you heard? The internet is on computers now, and if you have, check out our website, tsn.ca/OTR, for really off the record, more of my one-on-one interview with Bret. More from the panel, though, right after this. Coming up on Next Question, Bret will tell us whether he thinks Vince will read his new book. Back with the panel, we're talking wrestling. Bret Hart was part of the WWE's massive wave of popularity in the 80s, and he was also there when wrestling made the big comeback in the 90s. The question is, will wrestling ever be that big again, Bret?
I don't know. I think it's always proven over and over that it always seems to come back, and sometimes it comes back in a different form. Like it revamps itself and morphs into something else. It's kind of morphed into something else now.
Something that you know what the hot form of wrestling is right now is MMA.
Yeah.
And they're doing what we did in our business for years. They're building compelling characters and putting them in situations where you want to see the outcome.
Yeah.
The best booked wrestling program right now is The Ultimate Fighter. And it's legit, but the fact is, at the very base, they're doing what made pro wrestling great.
Yeah, they're making use of the drama, right? The drama is really, really important and stuff like that. And yeah, you're right. The Ultimate Fighter, they've taken it back to what like wrestling was, where it was just 2 guys that had a fight over a title belt, you know? But to answer your question, I really do think wrestling can have another peak popularity period, but you have to find that one guy. It's like when they found Stone Cold Steve Austin in the 90s, when you found Hulk Hogan in the 80s. If you can find that one guy that the public latches on, like with The Rock as well. Right. If the public latches onto the guy, it can take it right back to the top again.
Well, I agree with you on a certain level, but I also think more than just one guy, there needs to be a new concept in our sport, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think it's going to have to shift more towards more reality-based, following what the MMA is doing. We're never going to be what they are, but people are sick of seeing the sappy, really over-the-top, stupid stuff.
Are people tired of the soap opera?
Well, not the soap opera, but so much, but like Scott says, the really bad, stupid, sappy stuff. To me, I think it needs to go back to its roots, and just like, you've got a title belt, you've got 2 guys that want to fight for the title belt, and you build your drama out of that. You don't need cars blowing up backstage and all that kind of stuff,
I think there should be less talking, more wrestling.
Right.
More stories with the wrestling.
Yeah, and you're involved in it. That would you? I mean, as a wrestler, would you enjoy that more? Would that make you happy?
That would make me more happy. I mean, it's good to do the vignettes and do the skits, but I mean, to actually see wrestling in the ring is a lot more entertaining than seeing two guys going out there yelling at the mic at each other for half an hour, wasting TV time, wasting the people's money.
And Bret, you said the same thing to me earlier.
You're going to find over time that with Ultimate Fight, and I have a lot of respect for it, but somebody's going to get killed in Ultimate Fight, and then you're going to go, I wish we were watching wrestling. Wrestling kind of gave people that same fix that they get now from Ultimate Fight. But the big difference, and I'm proud to say it, the difference between pro wrestling and Ultimate Fight is that for the most part, wrestlers weren't killing each other. Like there was no brain cells being pounded out of somebody's.
Not in the ring, Bret, but outside the ring. I mean, has that affected wrestling's ability to bounce back? We talked about it earlier, but with the Chris Benoit tragedy. Does wrestling have that comeback left in it?
Oh, I think so. I think especially if people see that the WWE and TNA are going to be more proactive about taking care of the guys. I think if the government does intervene in the U.S. like they've talked about, and we do see some sort of regulated policy and a proper drug policy in place, I think that people would. I think the fans want to know that guys like Vince McMahon are taking care of the wrestlers, and reading Bret's book and other stuff like that, you realize that's not the case.
Well, can wrestling unionize, Scott? Can it unionize?
Yeah, they need to.
Well, here's the problem, and I mean, we've seen it over and over. To unionize it, it's going to take the guys that are at the very top, that are the ones that don't need the union, are the guys that are going to need to push for it. Can it unionize? Yeah, and like Bret said many times, it really is time for some people to try to get together. I mean, there's a little group in the United States Ring of Honor. They make no money. They wrestle in front of small crowds. They got their great niche market, and I love them. They're great at what they do. Every wrestler on their roster has health insurance, but WWE and TNA doesn't.
It's amazing to me. Bret, do you think the WWE could ever unionize?
They're going to have to, I think, if they're going to keep things going.
Bret, we're going to dip into the TSN mailbag because someone has apparently written a fascinating email. They say, hey, Bret, with Landsberg not here, any chance you could put Onrait in a sharpshooter? That comes from John Wright from Calgary.
Well, I'd be better off putting it on John Wright rather than Onrait.
Yeah, I agree. John Wright, you're getting it. Look out, John Wright.
Off the Record's email of the day is brought to you by L'Oreal Men Expert. The future of your skin is in your hands.
What's next?
Wow.
Oh, so make it all go away.
Let's do it. He's always been good to me. I certainly can't complain.
Bret Hart's new book is called Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling. Bret, what was the first book you ever read?
1984, George Orwell.
And your favorite author?
Mark Halperin.
Where did the nickname Hitman come from?
It came when Sugar Ray Leonard beat Hitman Hearns in a boxing match, and he said he was going to retire, which he didn't.
You took the name anyway, that's cool. On a scale of 1 to 10, tell me the likelihood that Vince McMahon will read your book.
10 that he will.
Well, that's pretty impressive, actually. When did you start using the sharpshooter?
I started using it in about 91.
And how did you come up with it?
They were trying to explain it to me, and I figured it out myself.
Why the pink tights?
We're trying to be bad guys.
What is the greatest wrestling name of all time, in your opinion?
Strangler Ed Lewis.
And the worst?
I don't know.
Not Leaping Lanny Poffo?
Leaping Lanny Poffo.
That one's a toughie. You've been on the show many times. You've gotten to know Michael. He's in pretty good shape for a man that old. Could he beat me in a cage match, Bret?
Well, I'd have to give you that my advice is that Michael's a really dirty fighter.
Yeah.
And you really better do your homework.
I think I should. If we asked someone in the wrestling world to give us a comment about you, who would have the nicest things to say about you, Bret?
I don't know. Maybe Sonny.
Well, that's good. Who wouldn't be very kind?
Oh, I don't imagine Shawn Michaels or Hunter Helmsley have a whole lot of good things to say about me.
Whatever happened to the handicap match? Why no more handicap matches?
That's a good question.
Where is Sky Low these days? Do you have any idea?
He's 6 foot under.
What did you get paid for your first ever match?
I believe I got a whole $25.
and you know you're getting $25 for this show. What wrestler's biography do you have absolutely no interest in reading?
All of them except for Mankind's.
Your book is fantastic. Thank you so much for doing Next Question. Bret Hart, you've been great.
Thank you.
Off the Record's Next Question is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight. Michael Landsberg's clothing supplied by Got Style, Toronto's newest menswear store and spa.
Telling